The great dragon Velthros had lived for 3,000 years. His home was a giant ship that floated in space between the stars. The ship was bigger than most cities and filled with treasure from every corner of the galaxy. Gold coins covered the floors like carpets. Jewels hung from the walls like colorful stars. Ancient weapons and mysterious devices filled every room, but Velthros was alone. Today was special, though. Today, beings from all across the galaxy had come to visit him. They came in their own ships, forming a long line in the darkness of space. Each visitor brought gifts, hoping the dragon would help them or at least not destroy them. The dragon was powerful enough to break planets, so everyone was afraid of him. Admiral Keon stood at the front of the line. He was the leader of the human space fleet. His uniform was clean and proper, but his hands shook just a little. Behind him stood representatives from many different worlds. Some looked like humans but with 4 arms. Others were made of living metal. Some glowed with their own light. The dragon's chamber was enormous. The ceiling reached so high it disappeared into shadows. Velthros himself was the size of a building. His scales were black as deep space and his eyes glowed like golden suns. When he moved, the whole ship trembled. The first visitor stepped forward. She was from the planet Centauria and had 4 arms. In her hands, she carried a crystal that contained the light of a dying star. The crystal pulsed with enough energy to power an entire world for hundreds of years. "Great Lord Velthros," she said, bowing low, "I offer this gift from my people. We hope for your friendship and protection." The dragon looked at the crystal with eyes that had seen everything the universe could offer. He barely glanced at it before waving one massive claw. "Place it with the others," he said in a voice like distant thunder. The Centaurian's face fell, but she did as told. Her precious gift joined a growing pile of rejected treasures. Next came the Quillians, beings made of living silicon who rang like bells when they moved. They brought a sphere of liquid metal that could sing songs to heal wounds in space itself. The sphere was beautiful and magical, but Velthros showed no interest. With another wave of his claw, it too went to the pile. One by one they came. The fish-like people from the water worlds brought pearls that held tiny oceans inside them. Strange energy beings offered crystals made of pure thought. Each gift was worth more money than most people could imagine. Each gift could buy entire star systems, but the dragon accepted nothing. Admiral Keon watched all this with growing worry. His own gift suddenly seemed very small. It was a data crystal containing all of human military history, stories of how humans had grown from one small planet to masters of many worlds. He had thought it might interest the dragon, but now he was not so sure. When his turn came, Admiral Keon stepped forward and offered the crystal. "Lord Velthros, this contains the complete story of humanity's rise among the stars. Our tactics, our victories, our lessons learned through centuries of conflict." For a moment, something flickered in the dragon's golden eyes. Interest, perhaps, or maybe respect. He studied the crystal for several long seconds, his ancient mind reading through all the information in moments. "Interesting," Velthros said slowly. "Your species has shown remarkable growth in such a short time." Admiral Keon's heart lifted. But then the dragon gestured toward the pile of rejected gifts. "But not what I seek. Take your place with the others." The chamber fell silent except for the low hum of the ship's engines. Everyone had failed. The great dragon lord had accepted nothing, just as he had done for centuries. The visitors began to file out, disappointed but relieved to be alive. That was when little Minho stepped forward. The boy was only 8 years old. He wore the simple gray clothes of the orphan ships that followed the human fleet. These ships carried children who had lost their families in the wars between planets. No one expected a child to be here, least of all the dragon. Minho carried no crystal or sphere or magical device. In his small hands was a piece of old paper, folded carefully. On it he had drawn pictures with broken crayons. Stick figures danced across the page in bright colors. There was a big dragon in the middle, and tiny people holding hands around it. The dragon in the picture was smiling. The boy walked up to the enormous dragon without fear. His dark eyes were bright and curious. Around him, hundreds of adults held their breath. Velthros lowered his massive head until one golden eye was level with the small human. For the first time in many years, he felt truly curious about something. "Tell me, small one," the dragon said, his voice gentle as summer rain. "What is this gift you bring me?" Minho looked up at the eye that was bigger than his whole body. He was not afraid. He was excited, like when older children finally paid attention to his drawings. "It's a birthday card," Minho said clearly. Today is your birthday, right? The grown-up said you're 3,000 years old today. That's really, really old. But birthdays should be happy, so I made you a card. The dragon went completely still. In 3,000 years of life, no one had ever remembered the day he was born. No one had ever celebrated it. Birthdays were something humans did because their lives were so short. They marked each year with joy instead of just enduring it. I drew you playing with people, Minho continued, holding up his card. Because you look really lonely up here with all these shiny things. And see, I drew you smiling. Dragons can smile, can't they? Valthros looked at the simple drawing more carefully. The stick figure dragon did have an upward curve for a mouth. Around it, tiny humans held hands in a circle. Their faces were just dots and lines, but they looked happy. The paper isn't very good, Minho admitted, smoothing out a wrinkle. It's from the recycling bins, and I only had 3 crayons that weren't broken, but I worked really hard on it. Do you like it? The question hung in the air like magic. Here was a gift without any hidden purpose. No fear, no desperate need. Just a child who thought birthdays should be celebrated, no matter whose birthday it was. All around the chamber, the rejected gifts glittered and sparkled. Treasures worth entire worlds lay in piles, unwanted. But this simple piece of recycled paper had captured the attention of the most powerful being in known space. I like it very much, Valthros said finally. His voice was softer now, like wind through tall grass. But tell me, young Minho, are you not afraid of me? Others bring me gifts because they fear what I might do if they don't. You bring me this because you think I should have a happy birthday. Why? Minho tilted his head, thinking about the question with the seriousness only children could bring to simple things. Well, he said, everybody should have a happy birthday. And you don't look mean to me. You look sad. Really, really sad. Like when Jinwoo cries at night because he misses his parents. The comparison hit the dragon like a physical blow, to be compared to a sad orphan child by another orphan child. Valthros had never thought that his loneliness might be visible to young eyes that saw clearly, because they were not clouded by fear. Besides, Minho added with simple childhood logic, if you were really mean, you would have hurt all these people already. But you just told them to go away. That's what I do when I don't want to play with someone. I don't hurt them. I just say go away. The logic was so simple that several of the watching adults found themselves nodding. This child had reduced the fearsome reputation of the great dragon lord to that of a playmate who didn't want company. Something deep inside Valthros began to change. For 3,000 years he had collected beautiful things that meant nothing beyond their value. But this crude paper card, worthless to anyone else, represented something he had forgotten existed. Pure kindness given freely. May I keep your gift, young Minho? The dragon asked formally. Of course, Minho smiled brightly. It's yours. Happy birthday, Mr. Dragon. With infinite care, Valthros lifted the paper card. He did not place it with the pile of rejected treasures. Instead, he put it in a special place carved into the wall beside his massive head. The simple drawing looked very small in the vast chamber, but somehow it seemed to fill the entire space with warmth. The watchers understood they were seeing something that had never happened before. The great dragon lord had accepted a gift. More than that, he had accepted a gift from humanity, from their youngest and most innocent. Admiral Keon stepped forward, his military training barely containing his amazement. Lord Valthros, if I may ask, what does this mean for our peoples? The dragon's golden gaze moved from the carefully placed birthday card to the assembled crowd, then back to the small boy who stood fearlessly beside his massive claw. Everything was about to change. The dragon's question hung in the air like a challenge to everything the assembled beings thought they knew about power and diplomacy. Admiral Keon felt his heart racing as he realized they were witnessing history being made. Not through war or conquest, but through the simple kindness of a human child. Minho looked up at the enormous golden eye that studied him with such intensity. He felt no fear, only the same happiness he felt when someone actually listened to what he had to say. Most adults were too busy to pay attention to children, but this giant dragon was giving him his complete focus. You asked what this means, the dragon said, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. Let me tell you what young Minho has accomplished that all your treasures could not. The chamber fell so quiet that even the ship's engines seemed to whisper. Every being present leaned forward, desperate to understand what had just changed in the balance of galactic power. For 3,000 years, Veltros continued. Countless civilizations have tried to buy my favor. They brought me their most precious possessions, their greatest technologies, their rarest artifacts. They believed that by giving me what they valued most, they could purchase my protection or alliance. Minho tilted his head with curiosity. But you didn't want any of that stuff, did you? No, small one, I did not. The dragon's attention returned to the child. I have wealth beyond counting, knowledge that spans galaxies and power that could reshape star systems. But until today, no being had ever offered me what I truly needed. What's that? Minho asked with the directness that made adults uncomfortable, but somehow pleased ancient dragons. Recognition that I am more than just a force to be feared, or a vault to store unwanted gifts. Your card tells me something these others never considered, that even ancient dragons might appreciate simple kindness given without expecting anything in return. The Centaurian ambassador stepped forward, her forearms gesturing in confusion. But great lord, surely our gifts showed respect for your power and wisdom. Veltros turned his massive head toward her, and for a moment his old irritation flickered in his golden eyes. Your gifts showed fear and desire for my help. Young Minho's gift shows something much rarer, the understanding that I might want friendship instead of tribute. Friendship? Admiral Keon repeated the word slowly as if tasting something new and strange. Yes, Admiral. Consider this simple fact. In 3,000 years, not one delegation has ever asked how I might be feeling. Not one has wondered about my well-being or offered companionship. They come seeking favors, alliances, or hoping to avoid my anger. But this child saw an ancient being who might be lonely and decided to offer comfort. Minho nodded enthusiastically. That's what friends do. When someone looks sad, you try to make them feel better, and birthdays are supposed to be happy, so I wanted to make your birthday happy too. The simplicity of it struck the watching delegates like a revelation. They had approached the great dragon lord as a problem to be solved, not as a person who might value emotional connection over material wealth. The child had succeeded where entire civilizations had failed, not through superior offerings, but through superior understanding of what really mattered. This changes everything we thought we knew about diplomacy, Admiral Keon said slowly, his tactical mind already working through the implications. We've been treating this like a business transaction when perhaps we should have simply tried to make a friend. Exactly, Veltros agreed, his voice warming with something that might have been approval. Your species possesses something unique, Admiral. This child demonstrates a quality I have rarely encountered in my long existence, the ability to see past appearances to emotional truth. He looked at a feared dragon and saw someone who might appreciate a birthday card. The dragon's massive claw moved gently to touch the edge of Minho's card where it rested in its place of honor. I have decided to accept not just young Minho's gift, but his offer of friendship. And that friendship extends to his people, to all of humanity. A wave of excited whispers ran through the assembled delegates. The great dragon lord was not just accepting a gift. He was entering into an alliance based not on political necessity or shared enemies, but on the simple kindness of a human child. But what does this mean in practical terms? Asked the Quillian representative, their silicon-based mind struggling to process the emotional complexity of the situation. Veltros considered the question carefully. It means that humanity has earned something I have never before granted to any species. My active protection and assistance offered freely rather than purchased with tribute. Minho clapped his hands together in pure delight. Does this mean we can be real friends? Like actual friends? Yes, young Minho. Real friends. The boy's smile was so bright it could have powered a small space station. That's great. Friends share things and help each other and play games together. Do you know any good games? I bet you know really amazing games since you're so old and smart. For the first time in 3,000 years, the great dragon lord found himself laughing. The sound was like music made of thunder and wind chimes. The other delegates stared in amazement as the most feared being in known space was reduced to delighted chuckling by a child's enthusiasm. I know a few games, Veltros admitted, his eyes twinkling with something that might have been mischief. Perhaps I could teach you some and you could teach me the games that human children play. Really? That would be awesome. Minho paused, suddenly remembering something important. Oh, but I should probably ask Admiral Keon if it's okay. He's kind of in charge of keeping us kids safe. Admiral Keon found himself in the unprecedented position of being asked by both a dragon and an 8-year-old boy for permission to have a playdate. His years of military training had not prepared him for this particular scenario. but his instincts told him he was witnessing something historically important. I think that would be acceptable. Minho, he said carefully, provided Lord Valthros doesn't mind having his fortress visited by curious children. Mind? Valthros's golden eyes gleamed with amusement. Admiral, I believe you underestimate how refreshing such visits might be. I have spent centuries in solitude broken only by fearful supplicants bringing unwanted gifts. The prospect of genuine company is quite appealing. The implications were staggering. The other delegates exchanged meaningful glances, realizing they were witnessing the birth of an alliance unlike any in galactic history. Not forged through treaties or mutual defense agreements, but through the simple human instinct for kindness and connection. If I may ask, Lord Valthros, Admiral Keon ventured, what would this friendship mean for the broader galactic political situation? Your neutrality has been a stabilizing force for centuries. My neutrality was born of disinterest in the conflicts of short-lived species, the dragon replied thoughtfully. But young Minho has reminded me that some things transcend mere politics. His people possess something remarkable, a capacity for empathy that extends even to ancient dragons who have given them no particular reason for such kindness. Minho tugged on Admiral Keon's uniform sleeve. What's empathy? It's when you can understand how someone else feels and want to help them feel better, the Admiral explained patiently. Like when you made Lord Valthros a birthday card because you thought he might be lonely. Oh, that's just being nice, Minho said with the matter-of-fact tone children used for things adults made complicated. Everybody should be nice to everybody. Not everyone shares your philosophy, small one, Valthros observed with something that sounded like regret. In my experience, most beings are nice only when it benefits them to be so. That's silly, Minho declared with absolute certainty. Being nice feels good inside, and when you're nice to people, they want to be nice back to you. Then everybody feels good. It's like a game where everybody gets to win. The watching delegates absorbed this simple wisdom with varying degrees of amazement. Here was a child explaining the basic principles of successful diplomacy, as if they were playground rules, and somehow his approach had achieved what centuries of sophisticated negotiation had failed to accomplish. The Centaurian ambassador stepped forward hesitantly. Great Lord, if humanity has earned your favor through this child's gift, what does this mean for those of us who brought traditional offerings? Valthros looked at her with something that might have been gentle sympathy. It means you have learned an important lesson about the difference between tribute and friendship. Your gifts were beautiful and valuable, but they sought to purchase something that cannot be bought. Young Minho's gift was worthless in material terms, but priceless in emotional value. So our offerings were meaningless? The Delph delegate asked, his aquatic features rippling with disappointment. Not meaningless, Valthros corrected gently. Misguided. You came as supplicants when you might have come as potential friends. You offered tribute when you might have offered companionship. The fault lies not in your generosity, but in your assumptions about what I might truly desire. Minho looked around at all the sad alien faces with the concern that children showed for anyone who seemed upset. Are you all sad because you didn't bring birthday cards too? Because birthdays can have lots of friends. We could have a really big birthday party. Admiral Keon felt his world shifting as he watched the most powerful being in the galaxy seriously consider having a birthday party planned by an 8-year-old human child. The idea should have been ridiculous. Instead, it felt like the most natural thing in the universe. Lord Valthros, the Admiral said carefully, if you're willing to consider such a celebration, I believe the human delegation would be honored to help organize it. As would we, the Quillian representative added quickly, their silicon bodies shifting to warm orange and gold patterns. Our species may not understand emotions as other beings do, but we recognize the importance of marking significant moments. One by one, the other delegates began offering their help. The disappointment of rejected gifts was transforming into excitement for this impossible celebration. The great Dragon Lord watched this change with growing wonder. You would do this? Valthros asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Create a party for someone who just dismissed your most precious offerings? Of course, Minho exclaimed, jumping up and down with excitement. That's what friends do. And now we're all going to be friends, right? Friends celebrate together. The child's logic was perfect and unbreakable. In the space of one conversation, A simple birthday card had transformed a formal diplomatic meeting into the planning committee for what would surely be the strangest party in galactic history. "Very well," Valthros said, his ancient voice carrying warmth that had been missing for thousands of years. "I accept your offer of friendship, all of you. And yes, young Minho, I would very much like to have my first birthday party." The chamber immediately erupted in excited chatter as beings from dozens of worlds began discussing how to celebrate the birthday of a 3,000-year-old dragon. Through it all, Minho beamed with the satisfied happiness of someone who had convinced all the adults to throw the best party ever. Within hours, the dragon's fortress ship was buzzing with activity unlike anything it had ever seen. What had once been a cold, lonely vessel filled with hoarded treasures became a center of cooperation, as species from across the galaxy worked together on their impossible project. Minho had somehow appointed himself chief party coordinator, a title that everyone, including Valthros himself, seemed to accept without question. The boy moved through the ship's corridors with the confidence of someone who had never doubted that friendship and celebration would win the day. "The decorations should go here," Minho announced, standing in the vast main chamber and pointing at the high walls with complete authority. "And we need lots of colors, because birthdays should be bright and happy. Lord Valthros, what's your favorite color?" The dragon, who had been watching the preparations with fascinated amusement, thought about the question seriously. "I confess, young coordinator, that I have never considered having a favorite color. My existence has been rather gray and dark." "That's really sad," Minho said with the blunt honesty only children possessed. "Everything should have favorite colors. What about gold? Your eyes are gold, and they're really beautiful." "Gold it is, then," Valthros agreed, and within the hour the Centaurian artists were creating flowing banners of gold and silver light that danced through the air like living rainbows. Admiral Keon found himself in the strange position of coordinating party logistics with the great Dragon Lord. Their conversations had evolved from formal diplomatic exchanges to something that felt almost like friendship between equals. "Though Bad Orphanage ship Hanuel has some excellent cooks," the Admiral reported. "Young Hyunwoo is particularly talented with desserts, though I'm not sure how to make cakes big enough for someone of your size." "Perhaps," Valthros suggested with what might have been dragon humor, "we could have many small cakes instead of one impossibly large one. I suspect the joy comes from sharing rather than size." "Like cupcakes," Minho shouted, appearing suddenly from behind a stack of decorative materials the fish people had contributed. "Hundreds and hundreds of cupcakes, and we can put little candles on every single one." The challenge of providing enough cupcakes for a party that now included several hundred beings from multiple species had become a project that the combined fleets were approaching with military precision. Young Hyunwoo, the orphan boy who had become head baker, was working with alien food specialists to create treats that would be safe and delicious for all the different types of biology represented. Yunji, another orphan who had been quietly watching all the preparations, approached Minho with something carefully folded in her hands. "I made something too," she said shyly, "for Lord Valthros." "What is it?" Minho asked with the enthusiasm he brought to all new discoveries. "It's an origami crane," Yunji explained, unfolding the paper to show an intricate bird made from recycled ship documents. "In old Earth stories, cranes were symbols of long life and good luck. I thought since he's already lived so long, maybe he'd like some good luck too." Minho's eyes went wide with delight. "That's perfect, Lord Valthros. Yunji made you another." "Present." The dragon lowered his enormous head to examine the delicate paper bird, his golden eyes reflecting what might have been wonder. "It's beautiful, young Yunji. Will you tell me the story of these cranes?" As Yunji began shyly explaining the Earth legends, other orphan children started appearing from various corners of the ship, where they had been working on their own contributions. Each child had created something simple but heartfelt: hand-drawn pictures, paper flowers made from recycled materials, small sculptures built from spare ship parts, poems written in careful block letters. What amazed Valthros most was not the gifts themselves, but the way everyone was working together. The alien delegates, who had started out confused by the children's enthusiasm, were now contributing their own skills to support the young humans' efforts. The sound-loving Quillians were using their natural abilities to create crystal wind, chimes that sang birthday songs in frequencies that made the air itself dance with music. The energy beings were contributing light displays that painted the walls with shifting patterns of pure celebration. "This is unprecedented," Admiral Keon observed, watching a group of fish-like engineers help young Jae-hyun build an elaborate mobile to hang above the party area. "I've never seen such natural cooperation between so many different species." "It's the children," Valthros replied thoughtfully. "They approach friendship without the barriers that adults create. They see no reason why a human child and an alien artist cannot work together to make something beautiful." "The kids don't know it's supposed to be impossible," the Admiral agreed. "They just know they want to throw you a good party." As if summoned by their conversation, Minho appeared with Seona and Do-hyun flanking him like tiny generals preparing for battle. "Lord Valthros," Minho announced with great importance, "we need to talk about party games." "Party games?" the dragon repeated, clearly unfamiliar with the concept. "You can't have a birthday party without games," Seona explained, as if stating an obvious law of nature. "It's like having cake without frosting. You could do it, but it would be really sad." "We've been thinking," Do-hyun added seriously, "and regular party games might not work very well when one of the players is really, really big. So we need special dragon games." Valthros found himself genuinely curious. In 3,000 years, no one had ever suggested he might enjoy playing games. "What sort of games did you have in mind?" "Well," Minho began, pulling out a piece of paper covered with crayon drawings and careful notes. "We thought you could tell us stories about all the amazing places you've been, and we could try to guess which ones are real and which ones you made up. That's like 20 questions, but with adventures. And we could have a treasure hunt," Seona continued excitedly. "But instead of looking for gold and jewels, we look for friendship things, like finding someone who's never had a birthday party before, or someone who knows a really good joke. Plus singing," Do-hyun added with the serious expression of someone making a very important point. "Birthday parties always have singing. Do dragons sing?" The question caught Valthros completely off guard. In 3,000 years of existence, he had never once considered whether he could or should sing. Music was something other beings made while he listened from a distance. "I am uncertain," he admitted honestly. "Perhaps we could discover this together." "Yes!" all three children shouted in perfect unison, their combined enthusiasm creating a sound that could probably be heard throughout the ship. Watching these preparations, Admiral Keon realized he was seeing something that would change galactic politics forever. The children's natural approach to friendship was creating bonds between species that centuries of formal negotiations had failed to achieve. The great Dragon Lord, feared and alone for 3,000 years, was learning to laugh and wondering if he might enjoy singing. More importantly, every delegation was discovering that the barriers they had assumed were impossible to cross were really just misunderstandings waiting to be cleared up by someone willing to approach others with genuine kindness and curiosity. The birthday party was still days away, but already it had accomplished something no treaty or alliance had ever managed. It had shown that friendship was not only possible between the most unlikely beings, but that it was actually the most natural thing in the universe. The day of the great Dragon Lord's birthday party arrived like no other day in the history of the galaxy. The fortress ship that had once been a symbol of fear and loneliness was now filled with laughter, music, and the controlled chaos of beings from dozens of worlds working together to create something magical. Minho stood in the center of the vast chamber wearing his best clothes, which meant his cleanest orphanage uniform and a paper crown that Yoonji had made special for the chief party coordinator. Around him, the transformed space buzzed with excitement as hundreds of beings put the finishing touches on their preparations. The decorations were unlike anything ever seen before. They made no sense according to any design rules, but somehow created perfect harmony. Centaurian light ribbons danced between Quillian crystal chimes, while human children's colorful artwork brought joy to every corner of the sophisticated ship. It was like being inside a birthday card painted by the entire universe. "Lord Valthros," Minho called out in his important coordinator voice, "are you ready for your party?" The great dragon emerged from his quarters wearing something that made every being present stop and stare. On his enormous head sat a party hat, It had taken 3 different species working together to create a hat big enough for him, and the result was both ridiculous and wonderful. The hat was golden, naturally, with long streamers that flowed down his neck like a waterfall made of celebration. I believe I am as ready as a 3,000-year-old dragon can be for his first birthday party, Valthros said, his voice carrying notes of amusement and what might have been nervous excitement. Admiral Keon approached with the formal bearing of someone about to make history, but his eyes were bright with barely hidden laughter at the sight of the great dragon lord wearing party gear. Lord Valthros, on behalf of all the delegations and the children of the human orphan fleet, we officially declare this celebration begun. Wait, Mignot called out, raising his small hand like a traffic director. We have to sing first. That's how all birthday parties start. What happened next was probably the most unique musical performance in galactic history. Beings whose natural sounds ranged from harmonic frequencies to quantum vibrations to simple speech tried to sing happy birthday together in dozens of different styles at the same time. The result was chaotic, beautiful, and absolutely perfect. The human children's clear voices carried the main melody, while the Centaurians added shimmering harmonies that made the air sparkle. The Quillians contributed bell-like chimes that rang in perfect rhythm, and the energy beings created dancing lights that pulsed with the music. Even the usually silent fish people added bubbling sounds that somehow blended perfectly with everything else. Valthros listened to this impossible symphony with an expression of pure wonder. When the song ended, the silence that followed was warmer than any applause could have been. That was beautiful, he said simply. Thank you, all of you. Now presents, announced Siona, who had been chosen as gift coordinator despite being only 7 years old. But not the expensive presents from before. The friendship presents. The ceremony that followed turned every rule of diplomacy upside down. Instead of formal presentations by important officials, children stepped forward to offer their handmade gifts with the confidence of those who knew their offerings were exactly right. Jaehyun presented a mobile, made from recycled ship parts decorated with drawings of all the different species at the party. It's so you can remember that you have friends from lots of different worlds now, he explained with the seriousness only children brought to important matters. Dohyun offered a carefully written book of human jokes, each one printed in neat block letters. Because friends should laugh together, he said. And some of these are really funny. Well, I think they're funny. Hyunwoo says they're terrible, but he laughs anyway. Each gift was simple, personal, and clearly made with love rather than money. The alien delegates, inspired by the children's example, began offering their own friendship gifts. Songs, stories, demonstrations of their culture's games, and promises of future cooperation. The Centaurian ambassador presented a small device that showed the birthday celebration from many angles at once, creating a perfect memory that would last forever. So you can remember your first birthday party whenever you want, she explained. This is overwhelming, Valthros admitted, his voice softer than anyone had ever heard it. In 3,000 years I have collected vast treasures, but I have never owned anything as valuable as friendship freely given. That's because friendship isn't something you can buy, Minho explained with the wisdom that children sometimes possessed. You have to make it. Like making friends. That's why they call it making friends instead of buying friends. The games that followed were unlike anything in the history of relations between species. The story-guessing game became an adventure in imagination, as Valthros shared tales from his vast experience, while everyone tried to separate truth from fiction. His stories were so amazing that even the made-up ones seemed possible. I once saw a star that sang lullabies to its planets, he told them. Real, shouted Minho. I visited a world where the mountains walked around like giant pets, Valthros continued. Made up, called Siona. Actually, that one was real. The dragon chuckled, delighting in their surprised gasps. The treasure hunt became an exploration of what each species valued most about friendship. Instead of looking for gold and jewels, they searched for things like someone who had never laughed before today, or someone who knew how to make others feel welcome. It led to conversations that created more understanding between different peoples than decades of formal meetings, but it was the singing lesson that truly captured the magic of the day. When the children insisted that dragons must be able to sing, Valthros had been genuinely uncertain. His voice was made for commands and conversation, not music. Just try. Yunji encouraged gently. Sometimes you don't know you can do something until you try it. The first sounds that came from the great dragon lord were careful and uncertain. But as the children began singing along, their voices supporting and encouraging his, something wonderful happened. The dragon's voice found its place in the harmony, deep and rich, adding bass notes that made the whole ship seem to hum with music. Soon everyone was singing together in languages they had never heard before, creating melodies that had never existed until that moment. The music they made was imperfect, chaotic, and absolutely beautiful. I never knew I could sing, Velthros marveled as the song ended. You just needed friends to sing with, Minho said simply. As the official party activities wound down, the atmosphere in the chamber was charged with something entirely new in galactic relations. The formal barriers between species had not disappeared, but they had been proven unnecessary by simple acts of kindness and celebration. Young Hyunwoo appeared with a procession of helpers, carrying trays of cupcakes, each one topped with a tiny candle. There were hundreds of them, enough for everyone at the party to have their own little cake to share with the birthday dragon. Make a wish, Minho instructed, as Velthros looked at the sea of tiny flames flickering throughout his chamber. Birthday wishes are really important. The dragon closed his enormous golden eyes and was quiet for a long moment. When he opened them again, they seemed to glow with new warmth. I wished that this would not be my last birthday party, he said. It won't be, Minho promised with absolute certainty. Friends celebrate every birthday together. That's what friends do. As the celebration continued into the night, everyone present understood they had witnessed something that would change the galaxy forever. An alliance had been born not from treaties or shared enemies, but from the simple human belief that everyone, even ancient dragons, deserved to have their birthday celebrated with joy and friendship. The hand-drawn birthday card still hung in its place of honor, a simple piece of recycled paper that had become the foundation for a new age of cooperation between the stars. The days following the birthday party brought changes that no one could have predicted. The great dragon lord's fortress ship, once a place of fearsome solitude, had become something entirely new. It was now a meeting place where beings from across the galaxy came not to offer tribute, but to visit a friend. Minho had taken it upon himself to establish what he called friendship rules for the ship. These were simple guidelines written in his careful block letters and posted throughout the corridors. Rules like everyone gets to talk and know, being mean to anyone, and share your snacks. The fact that representatives of advanced civilizations were following rules written by an 8-year-old human should have been absurd, but somehow it worked perfectly. Admiral Keon found himself returning to the fortress ship almost daily, not for military purposes, but because both he and Velthros had discovered they enjoyed each other's company. Their conversations ranged from tactical discussions to philosophical debates about the nature of leadership and friendship. I never understood before, Velthros confided during one of their talks, how much wisdom can come from simplicity. Young Minho's approach to friendship has taught me more about successful relationships than 3,000 years of formal negotiations. Children see things clearly because they haven't learned to make them complicated yet, Admiral Keon agreed. They don't understand why kindness should be conditional or why friendship should be political. The orphan children had become regular visitors to the dragon's ship. They treated Velthros not as a fearsome creature to be avoided, but as a very large friend who told excellent stories and was surprisingly good at playing hide-and-seek. Despite his enormous size, Yunji had started a weekly origami class, teaching anyone interested how to fold paper into beautiful shapes. The sight of 4-armed centaurians and crystalline quillians carefully working with tiny pieces of recycled paper had become surprisingly common. Velthros himself had learned to make paper cranes, though his versions were large enough to use as small boats. Young Hyunwoo had established a cooking exchange program. Different species brought recipes from their homeworlds, and together they adapted them so everyone could enjoy new flavors safely. The dragon's chambers now regularly filled with the sense of dishes that represented dozens of different cultures and biologies, but perhaps the most significant change was in how other species began approaching the dragon. Word had spread throughout the galaxy about the human child who had succeeded, where countless civilizations had failed. Delegations now arrived not with precious gifts but with offerings of friendship. Children's drawings, handmade crafts, recordings of traditional songs, and invitations to cultural celebrations. The Andromedan Collective, a species known for their cold logic and efficient communication, sent a delegation with a gift that surprised everyone. It was a simple wooden toy, carved by hand by one of their engineers who had learned the skills specifically for this purpose. "We do not fully understand the concept of emotional gifts," their representative explained, "but we recognize their value in creating bonds between peoples. We offer this not as tribute, but as a symbol of our desire for friendship." Velthros accepted the wooden toy with the same care he had shown Minho's birthday card. He placed it in the growing collection of friendship gifts that now surrounded his living space, each one representing a connection that transcended political necessity. The ripple effects extended far beyond the dragon ship. Species that had been neutral or even hostile toward each other began finding common ground through their shared friendship with Velthros. The birthday party had created a network of connections that was transforming galactic politics. Minho, meanwhile, had appointed himself as the dragon's official schedule manager. He kept careful track of all the visits and made sure everyone got equal time with their new friend. His scheduling system was based primarily on who had been nicest to whom recently, and who had remembered to bring drawings or cookies. "Lord Velthros has a very busy social calendar now," Minho announced importantly to a newly arrived delegation from the Spiral Arm Confederacy. "But I can fit you in next Tuesday if you promise to be nice and maybe bring some of those sparkly singing crystals we heard about." The sight of trained diplomats taking scheduling instructions from a human child had become so normal that no one even commented on it anymore. Minho's system worked because it was based on the simple principle that everyone deserved attention and kindness. Siona had started what she called the Dragon's Friend Club, which met weekly aboard the fortress ship. Members included children from various species, along with adults who had learned to appreciate the simple joy of unstructured play and conversation. The club's only requirement was that members had to teach each other something new at every meeting. During one memorable meeting, an ancient crystalline being taught the children how to sing in harmonics that created visible light patterns. In return, the children taught the crystal being how to play tag, resulting in the most unusual game of chase in galactic history as rainbow light zipped through the dragon's corridors pursued by giggling youngsters. Velthros had discovered that he enjoyed hosting these gatherings immensely. For the first time in millennia, his vast chambers were filled with laughter and genuine warmth. He had learned to modulate his voice to tell bedtime stories, discovered he had a talent for riddles, and had become surprisingly skilled at mediating disputes between children from different species, he confided to Admiral Keon one evening as they watched Do-hyun teach a group of young aliens how to fold paper airplanes. "I spent 3,000 years collecting treasures, but I never understood what true wealth looked like until now." "And what does it look like?" the Admiral asked. "It looks like children from a dozen different worlds working together to build something beautiful. It sounds like laughter echoing through halls that were silent for centuries. It feels like belonging somewhere and being wanted not for what you can do for others, but simply for who you are." The transformation was not limited to the dragon and his immediate circle. Reports from across the galaxy spoke of increased cooperation between species, peaceful resolutions to long-standing conflicts, and a new emphasis on cultural exchange over military posturing. The birthday party had somehow reminded everyone that the universe was vast enough for all its peoples to be friends, rather than competitors. Young Jae-hyun had started a letter-writing project, helping beings from different worlds communicate with each other about everyday life, rather than politics. His simple idea that friends should know about each other's normal days had resulted in thousands of cross-cultural exchanges that were building understanding one personal story at a time. As the weeks passed, it became clear that what had started with a hand-drawn birthday card had become something much larger. A revolution in how beings related to each other, based not on power or fear or mutual benefit, but on the simple recognition that everyone, no matter how different they might appear, deserved kindness and friendship. The great Dragon Lord was no longer alone, and neither was anyone else who chose to embrace the lesson his young human friend had taught them all. 1 year later, the galaxy was a very different place. The transformation that had begun with a single birthday card had spread like ripples across the stars, touching every corner of known space. What historians would later call the Age of Friendship had begun not with treaties or conquests, but with the simple wisdom of a human child who believed everyone deserved kindness. The annual Great Dragon Lord birthday party had become the most important celebration in galactic history. Beings from hundreds of worlds made pilgrimages to attend, bringing not gifts of wealth but offerings of art, music, stories, and friendship. The fortress ship had been expanded multiple times to accommodate the growing crowds of visitors who came to celebrate not just Valthros, but the bonds that connected them all. Minho, now 9 years old and even more confident in his role as chief party coordinator, stood before the assembled multitude with the bearing of someone who had never doubted that friendship could change the universe. His paper crown was more elaborate this year, decorated with contributions from dozens of different species, each adding their own cultural touches to honor their young leader. "Welcome to the second annual Great Dragon Lord birthday party," Minho announced, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber thanks to Quillian amplification crystals. "This year we have friends from 347 different worlds, which is a new record for friendship." The crowd cheered in a symphony of sounds that ranged from human applause to harmonic resonances to bioluminescent flashes. Valthros, wearing an even more magnificent party hat than the previous year, looked out over the sea of beings who had come to celebrate with him and felt an emotion he had never experienced in his first 3,000 years of life. Pure, uncomplicated joy. Admiral Keon, now bearing the unofficial title of Dragon's Best Adult Friend, stepped forward to deliver the annual friendship report. This had become a tradition started by the children, who wanted to know how much friendship had been created since the last party. "This year," the Admiral announced proudly, "we can report the peaceful resolution of 23 major conflicts, the establishment of 156 new cultural exchange programs, and the creation of the Galactic Friendship Council, which meets monthly to solve problems through conversation instead of violence." The most remarkable change had been the emergence of what scholars were calling playground diplomacy. Children from different species had begun meeting regularly via holographic connections, playing games together and sharing stories. These innocent interactions had led to breakthroughs in understanding that had eluded adult diplomats for centuries. Yunji, now recognized as the galaxy's leading expert in interspecies origami, had established schools on 17 different worlds. Her simple paper-folding lessons had become a universal language that transcended biological differences. The sight of beings with tentacles, claws, or energy matrices carefully crafting delicate paper sculptures had become a symbol of patience and cooperation throughout known space. "The most important thing we learned," Yunja explained to a gathering of scientists studying the friendship phenomenon, "is that when you're concentrating on making something beautiful together, you forget about being different from each other." Young Hyunwoo had revolutionized galactic cuisine through his food exchange program. Restaurants throughout the galaxy now served friendship fusion dishes that combined ingredients and techniques from multiple worlds. The simple act of sharing meals had broken down more cultural barriers than centuries of formal negotiations. But perhaps the most significant development had been the transformation of Veltros himself. The ancient dragon, who had once been a symbol of fear and isolation, had become the galaxy's most beloved figure. His wisdom, gained through millennia of observation, was now shared freely with any who sought his counsel. His chambers had become a place where beings came not to seek favors, but to find comfort, advice, and friendship. "You know," Valthros confided to Minho during a quiet moment between party activities, "I used to think that power meant making others fear you. Now I understand that true power comes from helping others feel safe and welcome." Minho nodded seriously. "That's what I tried to tell you with the birthday card. Nobody wants to be scared all the time, but everybody wants to feel happy." The dragon's collection had changed completely over the past year. Where once piles of gold and jewels had gathered dust, now countless drawings, handmade gifts, and friendship tokens created a warm, lived-in feeling throughout his home. Each item represented a connection, a moment of kindness shared between beings who had chosen friendship over fear. The celebration itself had evolved into something that perfectly captured the spirit of what had been achieved. Instead of formal presentations, there were friendship circles where beings from different worlds shared stories and songs. Instead of competitive displays of wealth, there were collaborative art projects where everyone contributed according to their abilities. The highlight of the evening was the annual New Friend ceremony, where beings, who had never met before, were paired up for conversation and play. This year's ceremony included a crystalline mathematician and a human toddler, who discovered they both enjoyed building towers with blocks. Their delighted collaboration became the subject of countless recordings that would inspire similar friendships across the galaxy. Do-Hyun had become the official joke translator for the party, helping different species understand each other's humor. His patient work in finding the universal elements that made things funny had led to the creation of the first truly interspecies comedy shows, broadcast throughout the galaxy to audiences who discovered that laughter was indeed a universal language. As the party reached its peak, with beings from hundreds of worlds singing birthday songs in harmony, Valthros reflected on the journey that had brought them all to this moment. A year ago, he had been the loneliest being in the galaxy. Now he was surrounded by more friends than he could count, each one precious and unique. Lord Valthros, Siona called out, now wearing the title of Assistant Party Coordinator with great pride. It's time for your birthday wish. The tradition had been established the previous year, and this time the dragon was ready. As hundreds of candles flickered throughout the chamber, representing every world that had sent friendship delegations, Valthros closed his golden eyes and made his wish. I wish for this friendship to continue growing until every being in the universe knows they are valued and welcome somewhere, he said aloud, breaking the traditional rule about keeping wishes secret. That's a really good wish, Minho approved. And I think it's going to come true because that's what friends do. They help each other's wishes come true. As the celebration continued late into the night, with new friendships forming and old ones growing stronger, everyone present understood that they were part of something that would echo through history. The age of conquest and competition was giving way to an era of cooperation and mutual support. Years later, when historians tried to explain how a child's birthday card had transformed galactic civilization, they would point to countless factors. Political theories, economic models, and sociological analyses would all attempt to capture the magnitude of what had occurred. But those who had been there, who had witnessed the beginning and watched it grow, knew the truth was much simpler. The universe had been waiting for someone brave enough to offer kindness without expecting anything in return. It had taken a human orphan with 3 broken crayons and a piece of recycled paper to show everyone that the most powerful force in the cosmos was not technology or weapons or wealth, but the simple decision to be kind to each other. The great Dragon Lord's birthday card still hung in its place of honor, faded now but more precious than ever. It served as a reminder that the smallest gestures could have the greatest impact, and that sometimes the most important revolutions began not with armies or declarations, but with a child who believed that everyone, even ancient dragons, deserved to have friends. And in a galaxy now filled with beings who had learned to choose friendship over fear, that simple piece of paper had become the most valuable treasure of all.